I had like a very scary incident on March 10th. Yeah, I was sitting at breakfast with my husband, having a normal day, and we were in the middle of talking. And all of a sudden, I felt this really weird sensation. Justin was like, "Are you okay?" And I just didn't respond.
So Hailey Bieber had a big scare last week. She was having significant trouble with her body movements, and there was something involving her brain, doctors felt. And so she was in the hospital for at least a day. Fortunately, we are told this somehow resolved itself, but it looks like this was a brain clot. And they said that it might be COVID related, we're told.
Most of you probably know or seen the news about my wife. It's been really scary, but I know for a fact that God has her in the palm of his hands.
It's kind of like hard for me to tell this story. You know, I've only really up until now told friends and family, but I felt like it was important for me to share this. It already was like kind of a public situation and people kind of knew, but they didn't really know the full story. I had like a very scary incident on March 10th. Yeah, I was sitting at breakfast with my husband, having a normal day, and we were in the middle of talking. And all of a sudden, I felt this really weird sensation that kind of like traveled down my arm from my shoulder all the way down to my fingertips, and it made my fingertips feel really numb and weird. Justin was like, "Are you okay?" And I just didn't respond because I wasn't sure. And then he asked me again, and when I went to respond, I couldn't speak. Right side of my face started drooping, get a sentence out, get any of the words out. So obviously immediately I thought I was having a stroke. He thought I was having a stroke. Right away, he asked for somebody to please call 911. Where we were, there happened to be a doctor who rushed over. They started asking me questions. Definitely the scariest moment of my life. I had so many things running through my head. The number one thing being, I'm having a stroke. Am I gonna have permanent issues from this? Like, so many things were running through my head. The facial drooping lasted for probably like 30 seconds. And so they were asking me questions. Do you know where you are? Do you know your name? And I knew all of the answers. As soon as I would try to say it, I just could not get it out. My tongue and my mouth just could not form the sentences. And so obviously that was really, really scary. Got up, I could walk totally fine. At that point, it was really just like the speech issue. Went back to my house, waited for the ambulance to come. At that point, speech started to come back a little bit. Got in the ambulance to the hospital. But by the time I got to the emergency room, I was pretty much back to normal, could talk, having any issues with my face or my arm. They did like the stroke checklist. I scored a 0. I wasn't having any symptoms anymore. So basically, they did some scans and they were able to see that I had suffered a small blood clot to my brain, which they labeled as something called a TIA. Basically, it's like having a mini stroke. Definitely feels like having a stroke, except my body was able to resolve it pretty quickly, and then I didn't have any more issues for the whole rest of the day. And I felt really thankful and grateful for that it wasn't worse. I wasn't gonna have any permanent issue, but you know, my scans did show that I had a lack of oxygen to a certain part of my brain. Still definitely really, really scary. So they kept me overnight. They did tons of tests, did blood tests to see if I had a clotting disorder, if I had an autoimmune disease. They also did a certain test called a bubble echo, which is when they do an echo on your heart. They make it so it has bubbles in it, and then they put the bubbles in your vein. See if you have any bubbles escaping out of any part of your heart. And what they're looking for is something called a PFO. Basically what a PFO is, something that you are born with, and typically at birth it's supposed to close on its own, except sometimes it does not. Test, and they actually found that I had a grade 5 PFO, which is the highest grade that you can have. What happened with me is my blood clot actually escaped through the flap in my heart, and it traveled to my brain. They did come to the conclusion of why they think I had a blood clot in the first place. 3 different things. One was that I had just recently started birth control pills. Having a stroke is a potential side effect from birth control pills. The second thing was I had recently had COVID. And then the third thing was that I had recently gone on a really long flight. I had flown to Paris and back in a very short amount of time. And I slept through the whole flight both ways, didn't get up and move around, never thought about wearing compression socks. It was a perfect storm that led to me having a small blood clot. Recommendation from my doctors at UCLA was to have a procedure done called a PFO closure. I recently got the PFO closure. It went very smoothly. I'm recovering really well, really fast. I feel great. The biggest thing I feel, honestly, is I just feel really relieved that I will be able to just move on and just live my life. Yeah, so this is what happened. Thanks for watching.